You are bored right now. Maybe not this second, but today at some point you felt it. That hollow, restless feeling with no obvious cause. You reached for your phone, or stared at the ceiling, or opened the fridge for the third time knowing nothing had changed. And here is the strange part. That feeling is ancient. It is older than cities, older than agriculture, older than writing. Boredom has been inside you for hundreds of thousands of years, and what your ancestors did with it changed the entire course of human history. But first you need to understand something surprising. Boredom is not what you think it is. Most people assume boredom means there is nothing to do. That is wrong. Boredom is not the absence of stimulation. It is the inability to engage with the stimulation available. Psychologist John Eastwood at York University spent years studying this distinction, and what he found reframes everything. Boredom is not laziness. It is not weakness. It is your brain signaling that what you are currently doing does not match what it believes you are capable of. It is a misfire between attention and desire. And that misfire, in the ancient world, had consequences. Think about what life actually looked like for your ancestors 200,000 years ago. There were no schedules. There were no notifications. There were no obligations that stretched from morning to night. Your ancestors hunted. They gathered. They watched the fire. And then, for long stretches of time, they waited. They waited for weather to change. They waited for prey to return. They waited through the dark and the cold and the silence. That waiting was not filled with anything, and something in the human mind could not tolerate that emptiness. That intolerance is the most important thing your ancestors ever felt. Researchers studying early Homo sapiens sites across Africa and Europe have uncovered something remarkable in the archaeological record. In the downtime between survival tasks, early humans did not simply rest. They made things. They carved. They painted. They decorated objects that had no functional purpose. At Blombos Cave in South Africa, archaeologists found ochre pieces etched with geometric patterns dating back 77,000 years. Nobody carved those patterns to catch food. Nobody needed them to stay warm. They were made because a human brain encountered empty time and refused to leave it empty. Boredom, it turns out, is the engine of creativity, but it goes deeper than that. Because boredom does not just push you toward making things, it pushes you toward asking questions. And questions are what separated your ancestors from every other species on the planet. Cognitive scientist Merlin Donald, in his landmark work on the evolution of human consciousness, describes a phase he calls mimetic culture. Before language, before complex tools, early humans began to mentally simulate scenarios that did not exist yet. They ran imaginary hunts. They rehearsed social conflicts. They stared into the middle distance and thought about what was over the next ridge. This capacity for mental simulation, Donald argues, is the cognitive foundation of everything that came after it: art, language, religion, science. And when did this mental simulation happen? In the gaps, in the silences, in the boredom. Your brain was literally built for this. The default mode network is a set of brain regions that activates when you are not focused on a specific external task, when you zone out, when you daydream, when you are, in the plainest sense of the word, bored. For a long time, neuroscientists thought the default mode network was just background noise, your brain idling between tasks. But that interpretation was wrong. The default mode network is where your brain processes identity, imagines the future, rehearses social scenarios, and generates creative connections between unrelated ideas. It is, in other words, where your most important thinking happens. And it only switches on when you stop doing something else. Your ancestors, sitting by the fire with nothing pressing to accomplish, were running their default mode networks at full capacity. They were solving problems that had not happened yet. They were imagining people who were not there. They were building the internal architecture of a mind that could plan across time, across generations, across distances the eye could not see. Now consider what happens when you reach for your phone. The default mode network goes quiet. The stimulation interrupts it. You are not bored anymore, but you are also not thinking. Not really. Psychologist Sandy Mann at the University of Central Lancashire ran an experiment where participants were assigned deliberately boring tasks before being asked to complete a creative challenge. The bored participants significantly outperformed those who had been given engaging activities beforehand. The boredom had primed something. It had cleared the